So Arjun, why you want to go for civil services?
Sir, civil services as a career option I choose because of variety of reasons, sir. The first major reason is, sir, I have been associating with the social forestry initiatives, and I came to understand how closely the mechanism work and what an administrative officer can do, what changes can he bring in the system. So I thought that if I get into that job, I could also be able to do things in much better way. And secondly, sir, I think much of my interests like public speaking as well as other external speeches and all have much more potential in the civil services job. So I think that my passion can be turned into a profession in this job. So I took civil services as my career.
Okay. So was your college government funded institution?
No,
You
sir, it's a private college, sir.
It was a private college. Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
Arjun, you could have done like, some 3 years course like on any humanity subject. So why did you choose a 4 year, degree course like engineering? If you could have like, decided I have to go to administrative service. So graduation degree was sufficient for you.
Sir, actually, the information about the civil services was received in my third and fourth year of my college. So after that only I became serious about the preparation, and I was exposed to this exam only after my third year when I met some of my senior members, senior people who are going there. So I came on to know only in the third year, sir. So I was supposed to go with the flow.
Okay. So I can see your father is was a teacher, right?
My mother was a teacher, sir. Father
Acha.
was a bank employee.
Oh, yes, yes. Mother was a teacher. So, did she motivate you to go into civil services in early stages of your career? Like when you were into, like, usually what happens when you are studying in class 10th, 11th, 12th, then only by that time, like people who belonging to educational background family. So, basically, they get decided like what should be the career. So, what was the scenario by that time?
Sir, in my case, it has a small difference, sir. My mother as well as my father was actually giving me enough freedom to choose my career. And actually, it was my decision also taking the mechanical engineering. And the only thing she and my father insisted is that I must be doing good in whatever stream I choose. And they were not actually, in fact, much more pressurizing me to go to civil service and all. They just have given me the enough freedom. And it was my choice in mechanical engineering as well as civil services, but at the same time they have been motivating through my journey of civil services since the last 3 years I has been preparing, and they have been motivating enough, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay. So, Arjun, I can see you have won prizes on Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge. Even you were chairman of college entrepreneurship cell. So, basically, what this entrepreneurship is?
Sir, entrepreneurship actually means doing a business of our own and making profit out of it. So that is the term actually entrepreneurship means. It is a different from the normal jobs because we ourselves are becoming a businessman and starting an innovation company if possible so that it can earn profit.
Okay, so just in terms of profit, this is different from a normal business. Is it?
Yes, sir. It has a difference not just on profit, sir. It has also entrepreneurships are majoritarily innovative companies compared to other businesses which are traditional in nature.
What do you think? What is innovation?
So innovation is actually finding something or making something new which is not existent at the moment, sir.
Okay. So, do you think our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, ji, is an entrepreneur?
Sir, I think I will consider him as a new political entrepreneur, sir. He has used such a new political scenarios he has brought about, new political streams he had brought about. So, in a political entrepreneurship, I think he is a political entrepreneur.
Do you consider a uh, farmer is also an entrepreneur?
Sir, farmers cannot be wholly considered, especially if in Indian situation, they cannot be considered entrepreneurs because they are not used up to the new mechanization process, new contract farming practices, etc. So I think they are much more following a traditional method. So I think entrepreneurship in farmers is still what we have to achieve, sir.
But I can hear in news and here and there in my vicinity always that there is some agricultural entrepreneurship.
Yes.
So, how do you think that why people are moving towards agri entrepreneurship nowadays?
Sir, coming to certain factors which are leading to agriculture entrepreneurship, sir, it is majorly the factor because the traditional agriculture practices are not yielding much yields in case of rupees. So actually, people are moving towards new entrepreneurs like food processing industries and others, etc., so that they can achieve more profit from the agriculture produce. And secondly, also since India is being an agriculture rich country, agri entrepreneurs, especially in the mechanization field and drone, etc., artificial intelligence based agriculture, etc., those are new entrepreneurs coming. So that are actually a value in India because 50% of the population is still in agriculture. So I think these are the factors which are motivating agri entrepreneurs.
So, what is artificial intelligence?
So artificial intelligence is a mechanism through which we imitate the processing capacity of human brains so that we can reduce the human brain usage and we can use it through the computers as well as Internet of Things.
How you can implement this in agri entrepreneurship?
Sir, on two broad streams that can be involved, sir. And the first thing is, sir, on agriculture entrepreneurship, supporting agriculture entrepreneurship, sir. The first thing is we can agglomerate the data across the country on different agriculture products, their yields, the soil quality, etc. And through artificial intelligence, we can design what all mechanisms or what all machineries are needed in different areas. For example, in Kerala, it is much more a rice intensive cultivation. So we need such a mechanism through which we can improve rice yields. While in Rajasthan, it is much more millet yield. So we can decide on what basis this mechanization should be done. And also on the other field, also it gives a clear picture on how new entrepreneurship challenges on food processing industries, the logistics. We can calculate the time which is taken for logistics through the artificial intelligence, and we can find a solution for this so that it can aid in on agri entrepreneurship.
Okay, okay. So, Arjun, please let me know, what crop should be what farmers going with which crop, so they decide it. Okay, it is their choices. Okay, if they want to seed something, so they will do that. Okay, and suppose you are a person who got to know that if these new innovative technologies or artificial intelligence is getting used, so according to this, this should be the crop selection. While selecting crop, okay, your artificial intelligence is telling something and farmer is telling something. Okay, you have two solution now, whether you are going to hand over all these lands to a private company who is going to do according to the innovative methods, or you can convince farmer to sow the seed that is according to the artificial intelligence or according to your innovative technologies suggestions. Okay, so how you are going to implement this on ground level?
Sir, can you please repeat about the last two suggestions, sir? I didn't get that, sir.
uh, two options are there. Okay,
Yes,
suppose
yes.
through the artificial intelligence or through any of the mechanism that you have developed, you got to know crop ABC. A crop is there, ABC, that is going to give a better yield. Okay, but according to farmers, they don't want to use that uh, crop. Okay, they don't they want to seed something else. So you have two solutions. One, you are giving, being administrative authority, you are handing over to land to a private company, so that with the new technologies, crops and yield can be obtained better. Or you are going to convince farmer for the better yield to go with the innovative methodologies. So what you are going to do?
Sir, I will be in this scenario, sir, considering the present situation of India, where still there is threats of farmer marginalization. I would be going for the second option, and I'll myself convince the farmers to use the new innovation technologies rather than focusing on private entities and transferring their land to the private entities for the new innovation, sir. And sir, can I point out the reasons on that?
Yes, yes, please.
Sir, the basic thing is, sir, the agriculture is actually much more subsistence in various parts of India. So, if we need to modernize the agriculture itself, we need to run it through a government machinery because it is much more transparent and it is actually trust building to the people. And the other options which are available with me will be, sir. The first thing is, sir, actually we need to convey the message what we are trying to do, and we need to make the farmers visit a small number of model farms where we have made these innovations so that they will also get convinced. And the second thing, sir, instead of the private cooperative, we can go for a instead of private entity, we can go for cooperative farming, which is actually adopted in various parts of Kerala, and it is successful. So that we can, since the mechanization is a heavy intensive, capital intensive thing, we can go for corporate farming, whereby the farmers pool their land and they bring in new technology. So that is one new solution which we can do. And once the government is and provided if no other choices are there, we can have some private engagement in this, but with strict government regulator actually playing in the role, sir. So farmer collective initiatives are much more preferable in this initiative for me rather than a private entity, sir.
Okay, okay. So Arjun, suppose you are going to work in your private in your favorite area for innovation. You're going to be an entrepreneur. So what will be your favorite area?
Sir, my entrepreneurship favorite area is something related to forest development, etc. Because it is forest development as well as agriculture development, sir.
Okay. So Arjun, again my question comes to the first question itself. Being mechanical engineer, having so many knowledge of entrepreneurship, so why you don't want to go in your own entrepreneurship? Why you want to be civil servant?
Sir, in my personal understanding, sir, entrepreneurship is actually based on the resisting capacity of the person, and also trying to face the challenging situations and making maximum utilization of chances. So, according to me, I think, sir, being a civil servant actually presents me a large number of entrepreneurship challenges in my daily life of being a civil servant. So that, and also being a civil servant, it actually helps me in promoting entrepreneurship on a large scale basis rather than me myself becoming an entrepreneur, so that I can serve a large number of people also. So that I think, so that is why I chose to become a civil servant, sir.
Okay. Okay, so let's assume you are an administrative officer. You are a deputy collector. Okay. And you are posted in a rural area. Okay. So how you are going to promote entrepreneurship there?
Sir, the first thing which I will be doing in such a scenario is, sir, actually understanding the ground reality of the state and what is the major economic sources of the people, and also the socio-economic status of the people, sir. And once I get to understand what are the if there is any traditional occupation which we are doing, if there is some traditional occupation, I will be doing much more to promote such occupation in that area. And if there is no traditional occupation, I will be much more focusing on new skill development through Skill India Parks and sectoral skill councils, etc. Provided they have adequate skill, I'll be starting some entrepreneurship ventures and also talking with initiatives of the government as well as new private entities to cooperate with them. So the initial thing will be, sir, understanding their traditional occupation, and if possible, and if it is feasible on all methods, I'll be going with that as an entrepreneurship. And the second thing is skill development for the people. And the third thing is, making, once they are acquired the skill, I would start some new entrepreneurship initiatives under the state or under the government itself. And once it gets flourished, we can move to other areas, sir. So I think these are the three steps which I'll be taking.
What are the problems that you can see if somebody wants to be an entrepreneur?
Yes, sir. Sir, the major issues which we are facing is, sir, the first thing is, sir, the over focus which are given to the formal education. So, and also the formal jobs, so that this is preventing people from taking entrepreneurship in the early childhood itself. And the second thing, sir, the risk-taking capability of the younger children are getting reduced, because now they are not ready to take risk, and they are going to formal jobs in private as well as government sector so as to get a safe career. And I must also admit that, sir, there is some bureaucratic inertia also for not supporting this entrepreneurship, sir. If I can take my friend itself, he was one of the entrepreneur in waste management. He had explained to me how difficult it is to get the clearances. So we are having an innovation firm. So bureaucratic red tapeism is also an issue. And finally, the economic issue, like who will provide the funds? Since it's an innovation, people are hesitant to provide funds. So economic challenge is also affecting the new entrepreneurs. Sir.
Okay. So do you understand VC funding?
Sorry, sir, I am not aware of him, sir.
Venture capitalist funding.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Venture capitalist funding. Okay. Sir, it is actually okay. Sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, it is actually a funding mechanism through which new initiatives are provided with funding similar to that of angel investments. Sir.
So is it a group of people or like an individual person?
Sorry, sir, I have not much information on that, sir. I'll read about it, sir.
Okay. Any initiative by the government of India to promote entrepreneurship?
Yes, sir. Sir, Startup India, Stand Up India has been one of the major initiatives by government to provide economic as well as technical support to the people. Then Skill India is also promoting entrepreneurship skills in the people. And Make in India is also a program which is actually promoting entrepreneurship in India through being local, through being vocal to local products and made in India products. So these are the major initiatives. And even under Atmanirbhar Bharat also, we are actually undertaking a large number of entrepreneurship programs across different fields.
Okay. 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 Thank you, Arjun. Okay. So I can see an interesting hobby in your DAF, radio jockey. Okay.
Yes.
So how do you think, like, how it can be utilized, how you can utilize this skill in your administrative service?
Sir, as you said, radio jockey was one of my favorite hobbies, sir. And being with the in-hand experience of being a radio jockey, we are actually adapted to deal with like emergency situations. There will be some comment, there will be some messages coming that we should air this program suddenly. So we are adapted to emergency situations. And also, since the administration also involves a large number of emergency situations, dealing with such emergencies help me in administration also. And also coming to the other points, sir, we are actually much more adapted to changing our mood according to the situations. So if it is an entertainment program, we'll be actually moving to such a thing. And if it is something which is serious program, we'll be going on that mode. So I think that in administration also, we have to face some situations where we have to be stern so that we can become stern. And as at the other moment, we can also become free. So that helps in a flexibility. And moreover, I think the public speaking as well as convincing the people skill through the radio jockey will help immensely in solving the major issues, like if there is some public protest or some crisis or some riots, etc. Sir.
Okay. Okay, I can see even you were the speaker of you are having that hobby, speaker of school model parliament.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what is this model parliament?
Sir, specifically on what we had done in school or in general sense, sir?
In okay, what you have done in school and in general sense as well.
Sir, coming to the first part, sir, actually School Model Parliament is a program to develop parliamentary practices among the children. And we'll be representing some peoples in the school model parliament, and there will be ministers and there will be opposition leaders selected from students, and they will be discussing about the problems in the school like waste management, gardening, or some other issues with teaching, etc. So that is about the school model parliament. And coming to the second part, according to me, a model parliament is something where discussions, debates, and deliberations happen, and the law is passed only through these three methods, sir. And we have a parliamentary committees where we discuss a large number of issues on technical matters, and we have a neutral speaker in a model parliament. And also both the opposition as well as the ruling party have consensus when it comes to national matters. So those are the aspects which I attribute towards a model parliament.
Okay, so you were the speaker.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how was that feeling?
Sir, it is actually a privileged position, sir, because we don't need to support any of the groups, whether ruling or the opposition, and also we have even powers so as to like handle the issues. Like if there is some shoutings happening on the school model parliament, we can give warnings to them, and we have the power to take actions also. So I think it is much more privileged position and also good exposure on parliamentary practices.
So how do you compare this, your speaker position in a school model parliament with the actual parliament speaker?
Sir, both this has though the practices or the privileges are almost same. I think when in school, the discussion is much more limited to the matters around the schools or its premises. But when it comes to parliament, it is much more bigger arena. And also, then coming to the numbers, in school parliament, the numbers will be very small. But in how actual parliament, the numbers of people, MPs itself is very large. And when it comes to discussion of matters, sir, we actually have less formal methods of discussing the matters. But in our actual parliament, there is much more rule of law as well as rule of business, business conduct rules, etc., to carry out the function. And in school, apart from school parliament, in actual parliament, we have other functions like passing the money bills, passing finance bills, and other activities also.
Okay, okay. Okay, so your optional is geography.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so could you please let me know about plate tectonic theory?
So plate tectonic theory is actually associated with how or the origin of continents as well as oceans are actually associated. And in simple words, sir, the Earth is actually having a large number of plates, both major as well as minor plates, depending on that area. And it says that the theory says that the plate is in actual continuous movement, and there are some plates which are diverging in nature, and there are some plates which are converging in nature. Whenever diverging plates meet, actually there is a formation of oceans, and whenever converging plate meets, there is a formation of mountains. So I think so the continent formation as the present scenario is actually described on the basis of plate tectonics.
Okay, so could you please explain me the convergence of plates, like in details? I want to know.
Yes, sir. Sir, convergence of plates, when continent, there are two major types of plate convergence which I can remember, sir. When it comes to both, if the both plates are made up of continent origin, their convergence actually leads to the formation of mountains, and which are the examples we have Himalayan mountains, which is actually a result of Indian plate colliding with that of the Eurasian plate. And when it comes to continent and an ocean convergence, sir, it can actually lead to the formation of trenches, sir. I'm not sure on that, sir. And there is also an oceanic convergence where no new phenomena is actually happening, and because both are ocean bodies, sir. I have limited knowledge on that, sir. I'll read about it, sir.
Okay, so suppose one plate is continental and one plate is oceanic. Okay, and they're getting converged. Okay, so one plate will subduct
Yes, sir.
within the other, right?
Yes, sir.
So which plate will subduct and why?
Uh, sir, can I take a guess on that, sir?
Yes,
Sir, I think it is the oceanic plate which is submerging.
specific reason.
Sir, it is because the density of the oceanic plate is less than that of continental plate, sir.
If density is lesser than, so it should go up.
Uh,
Density should be higher, then only it will go down.
Sorry, sir, I'm not very sure on that, sir. I should read
Okay,
about it.
could you please let me know, like uh, oceanic plate is made up of
Silicon and manganese, sir.
and continental plate?
Silicon and aluminum.
Okay. Have you heard mid-oceanic ridges?
Sir? Yes.
Mid-oceanic ridges,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
what it is?
Sir, actually, it is actually a ridge or some external projection which is actually present in the North Atlantic Ocean, sir.
So it is present only in North Atlantic Ocean and nowhere else.
Sir, it is. I think it is with North Atlantic, sir. I'm not very sure on that, sir. I should read about it, sir.
Okay, okay. Okay, so Arjun, thank you very much. Okay,
Thank you,
so
sir.
handing over to Omesh Gupta sir and then Sankat Mochan sir and followed by Suman sir. Thank you, Arjun. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hello, Arjun.
Yes, sir. Good
Good
morning,
morning.
sir. Good morning,
How are
sir.
you?
Fine, sir. Going good.
Okay. So, how is the weather there in Kerala?
Sir, it's the monsoon has really had a great outburst. Right now, it's heavy raining, sir. It's very cold also here.
Okay. Okay. So, regarding monsoon, what is the prediction of this year's monsoon? How will it be?
Sir, on the early months, it was predicted that it will be above average, and it will reach Indian coast by June 1st, May 31st, sir. But when it on the June, they predicted that it will be reaching the Kerala coast only by third, in which it dipped, and also the monsoon will be normal in nature, sir.
Okay.
The prediction
What
is
do
a
you
normal
mean
one.
by? Okay, fine. What do you mean by monsoon being normal in nature? Can you explain?
Sir, I'm not very specific on that, sir, but with my limited knowledge, sir, it is based upon the long period average. Hello, sir. Can you, sir?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Sir, it is based on long period average of rainfall, and I think I'm not specific of the years. They are taking actually an average of a span of 10 or 25 years. I'm not sure, and they are actually calculating months. And actually, any deviations which is predicted from the long period average is actually considered as divergence or convergence. And if it is almost equal to the long period average, it is taken as normal monsoon, sir. It is my limited information, sir.
Okay, no problem. So, explain me, as a layman, I want to understand the phenomena of El Nino and La Nina. So, considering me as a layman, not a geography student,
Sure, sir.
please explain both of them to me. First,
Yes,
El
sir.
Nino, La Nina.
Sure, sir. Sir, actually, El Nino and La Nina is actually a heating phenomena. Actually, there is heating of the oceans due to the sun's infiltration, sun's insolation. And what happens in El Nino is very simple. That in the south, we have actually the South American coast, which actually gets warmer. When South American coast gets warmer, actually, and at the same time, Indian coast or the Western coast or Arabian Sea gets colder. And what happens is, sir, sorry, it is ulta, sir. Sorry, the Indian coast get. Sir, can I get a few seconds to think, sir?
Sure, take your time.
Yes, sir. Shall I?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
In El Nino, actually, actually there is insolation happening everywhere in the sun due to the sun's radiation. And during the monsoon season, especially on the post May, what happens is that it can cause actually getting very hot due to this phenomena. And what actually happens is the air rises, but at the same time, the Arabian coast is actually cold, high pressure. And so there is a circulation which is happening
Sorry to
between
interrupt
South
you,
American
Arjun.
coast as well as the American.
Sorry to interrupt you. Maybe probably because of internet issue, I could not hear you properly. Can you start again?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Right now, is it audible, sir?
Yeah, it is audible now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, actually, of the coast of South America, we have it is intensively heated, and as we know, intense heat creates low pressure. And at the same time, what happens in Arabian Sea is that we get intensively cold and it creates high pressure. And the simple logic is that air moves from high pressure to low pressure. So actually from Arabian Sea coast to it will move towards the South American coast, and the warm air comes to Arabian coast. And when it reaches the Arabian coast, it becomes a wind movement called as the southwest monsoon. And it is actually associated with the El Nino phenomenon. Uh, Sorry, sir, I messed up with that. Sorry, sir. I think that I should read on that, sir.
It's okay, no issues. Okay, leave it. Uh, Coming to the next, your hobby. You have written debate is one of your hobbies, right?
Yes.
So I'm giving you a topic on which you have to debate. Are
Sure,
you
sir.
aware of recent government regulation regulating the social media intermediaries?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware of those guidelines?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you are one of the representative of social media intermediaries. Let's say WhatsApp or Facebook, Instagram,
Okay, sir.
whatever.
Okay, sir.
And you are involved in a debate where you
Yes.
have to put forth your points
Yes,
in
sir.
favor of your organization or the organization which you are representative of. So
Yes, sir.
please speak at least 1 or 2 minutes on this. What will be your point considering the recent guidelines that the government has brought for the regulation of these social media intermediaries?
Yes, sir. Shall I start, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Actually, the IT regulations or regulations of the intermediary rules by the government is actually infringing on the rights of the social medias. Actually, our firms, ourselves being a social media, has been responsible over these years while we are providing services in India. And the new regulations actually means that with the government order, we are supposed to give them the message. And there is also a traceability criteria which the government brings in about. It is actually about the right to privacy, which is actually enshrined in the Puttaswamy case also. The Supreme Court had ensured that. And also giving a message to the government on request of national security of other matters. It is actually against the right to privacy because we have strict forms of right to privacy which is available in our companies of WhatsApp or Facebook, sir. And the second thing is, sir, it is scientifically impossible also, and also infeasible also, because we have an end-to-end encryption between the messages which we send through WhatsApp or other messaging platforms, sir. So actually cutting this end-to-end encryption is actually infringing on the rights and privacy of other peoples also, because it is a large network. So it is technically also infeasible for us. And finally, we have other point to make out is that the government actually till now date we have been actually cooperating with the government in criminal investigation cases, and we have been responsibly giving the responses or investigation details as quick as possible. So there is no need of any new regulations which the government to bring about. And also another point we have to bring about is that the government is actually having a large discretion when it comes to national security matters, and they can quote any matters as national security. And once such matters are brought to national security, it can even lead to solving of the political vedanta and other political issues also, sir. So it is impossible for us also to do that. And finally, we are not actually not supporting all the regulations. We are actually ready to support the nodal officer. We are actually ready to appoint the nodal officers as well as other grievance redressal officers, sir. But the regulations as a whole should not be made possible if possible for the intermediaries, sir.
Okay. Okay, Arjun, that was a quite good, wholesome covering of the issue.
Thank you, sir.
So, are you aware of these two laws that we are having? FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, and the
Yes.
second one is FEMA, that is Foreign Exchange Management Act.
Yes, sir.
Are you aware
I'm
of
aware
both
of
these?
them.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Though I'm not sure on the provisions, I am aware of the laws, sir.
Okay, fine, no issues. So, can you tell who implements these two laws?
Sir, I think if sir, can I take a guess on that, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Sir, Foreign Exchange Management Act is actually regulated by the Finance Ministry, I think, sir. And Foreign Contribution Regulation Act is by external ministry, sir. I'm not sure, though I am not sure on that, sir.
Okay, no problem. Very recently, government has brought certain amendments to this FCRA. Uh, this for regulating, especially the organization or the NGOs getting
Yes, sir.
foreign funding.
Yes, sir.
Are you aware of those amendments?
Yes, sir. I'm aware, sir.
Okay, fine. So there are apprehensions that it will lead to the closing down of certain foreign NGOs. For example, Greenpeace, Amnesty International. Amnesty has already declared that they will be winding up their operations in India.
Yes, sir.
So what is your opinion in that? Sal, are we moving towards the license Raj system again? Or it seems to me that it is becoming more draconian law because the kind of role that civil society organizations have. What is your take on this?
Sir, on this matter, sir, I think the apprehensions are right, but I think, sir, the regulation of NGOs as being a part of civil society is needed for our country, sir. Why I came to such a suggestion is such a decision is there because much of the NGOs actually are non unregulated or not even regulated before the laws are being in place. Sir. If I can take an example, there have been NGOs who are associating with protest in Kodamkulam, which is actually hampering our development. And even on certain other scenarios also, NGOs has played a detrimental role also. Though at the same time, I'm acknowledging the large part played by the NGOs in socio-economic development. But I think, sir, the new regulation which actually makes that the administrative charges or administrative expenses should be less than 50%. Sir, I think that law is much more essential because otherwise they will be carrying over the other amount which they have for some other purposes, and or even it doesn't meet the socio-economic development agenda of them. So I think capping the administrative expenses is a correct method. And sir, but at the same time, I think, and also registering a single account for NGOs, that is also one of the good example which the government has taken because the cash flow has to be regulated because all other accounts are actually regulated by the government. And I think a regulation is needed, but not a restraint. But at the same time, certain other regulations like having a bank account in New Delhi, etc. I think it doesn't makes up any much importance in this regulation, sir. Other than that, I think the regulations were much needed because so that we can mainstream the NGOs and we can integrate into the formal economy also, sir, so that they get a regulation.
Okay, but I don't agree with you. Like, I'm adamant to say that these regulations are very much infringing on the motivation. They are kind of leading to demotivation for the people who are motivated by the social service motive. So ultimately, if I want to do something for the society, but I don't want to get involved in these cumbersome processes, like though you did not mention it, but it asks for providing Aadhaar number of each and every trustee or member of that organization. So it infringes upon our right to privacy. So you have to convince me. For example, I am a very socially motivated person who wants to work for the society, right? So you have to convince me that I should go for opening such an organization for social cause. Though I am adamant that I will not go because government has come up with a very draconian law. How would you persuade me?
Yes, sir. Sir, I'll be definitely persuading you on the because I need to streamline your social inactiveness because social activeness I need to streamline. So I'll be definitely convincing you, sir. And first thing which I will say is, sir, the new regulations is actually not a regulation. It is just a mainstreaming or mainstream lining of the NGOs. Because as you have seen, sir, in the recent issues also, there has been various issues associated with NGOs, and even good NGOs are actually getting trapped up in these controversies. So as you are a person who is socially motivated, I think NGOs will be one of the good platform for you to perform also. And these regulations are in such a direction to give a better formalization of NGOs, sir. And when it comes to when it comes to draconian laws, which you are pointing out, sir, I don't think, I apologize that I don't think that those are draconian laws, sir. Actually, providing the Aadhaar numbers or other details of the persons who are associating with the trustees is not a major issue, sir, because the contributors are actually not being recorded. So I think it is not about right to privacy, because and also it is much more to deal with security concerns as well as the growth concerns of the nation, because we need to get information about the background of the people like you who are starting the NGOs, because we need to see that you have a clear image and you are not associated with any other problematic or some other anti-national organizations, sir. So it is in good motive, and also in long run also, while we are having formal NGOs or formalization of NGOs actually streamline the social development process, because right now we are unregulated NGOs are actually spending too much on single sectors. So since
Okay,
people's
Arjun,
like you, if you are
that's
starting an NGO,
sorry,
you can
sorry to
yes,
interrupt you, but that's
yes,
enough. I
yes.
can sense that you may convince me. No problem on that. But yeah, taking you to the next question.
Sure,
It's regarding India's foreign policy. Tell me three most important priority areas of India's foreign policy is a you. Let's say you are a diplomat. What would be the three most important foreign policy priorities for you?
so can I think for a few seconds, sir?
Yeah, please take your time.
So shall I?
Yeah.
So, being a diplomat, the three major areas right now, which actually is my focus, is the first one is associating with international organizations like the UN and getting a permanent seat in the UNSC as well as other organizations, because it is much needed to leverage our demands as well as our national priorities. And the second thing, sir, will be diaspora population, how to utilize the potential of the diaspora population and also ensure that they are safe, secure, and having a good livelihood in our other countries where they are living. And the third thing, sir, would be regional cooperation as well as other new initiatives, because we need to counter the threats by some of our neighboring countries. So I think new relationships like Quad, BRICS, etc., those will also be my priorities, sir.
Okay. What about your neighborhood?
Yes, sir. So that will I acknowledge that also, sir. And neighborhood also, I'll be having one of the neighborhood first policy, so that we can leverage the neighborhood also in this foreign policy and other initiatives.
Okay. So, are you aware of some this in Myanmar or immediate neighborhood in northeast? There was a military coup very recently.
Yes,
What was India's stand on that?
sir. India has been actually following it as a matter of their internal issues, and we have not been involving much on that. And it is also assigned with our Panchsheel, foreign policy Panchsheel, which actually point out that we are not actually involving any of the internal matters of the country, whether democracy or whether the military rule. It is up to that country to decide. But whenever there is a humanitarian crisis which is occurring, India will raise the issue in the world organizations. Right now, India is actually following such a policy.
Okay, fine. But the countries across the world, those especially the democratic ones, they have criticized, especially the human rights violations in Myanmar. So, don't you think that we are lagging on that front? We are not taking any stand on certain issues or like that happen in Myanmar. So, doesn't it project a kind of irresponsible democratic nation? We assume ourselves as one of the biggest democracy in this world. So it should be a moral responsibility of a country like India to acknowledge if any kind of human right violation is happening, that too in the immediate neighbor. So what do you think that why India stood with such a stance of not interfering? Yeah, those philosophical basis of conceal is okay, but I want to know the practical reason why India does not want to, let's say, antagonize Myanmar.
Sir, I politely disagree with the irresponsible behavior as you have quoted with which India has, sir. I think it is much more of an mature behavior, sir. because there has been allegations that India has been performing the role of a big brother in the neighborhood, sir. We are actually moving out from that. So I think it is much more of a mature behavior which India presents. And sir, it is much more like the government or the people of when it comes to Rohingya issue, we have been actively involved in that, and we have actually
That's
made
okay.
steps in that.
Sorry to interrupt you, but tell me exactly reason. Why are we doing this? Can you tell that
Sure,
exact reason?
sure, sir.
Definitely, if we
Sir,
are doing something which is being criticized at the international arena, so there must be some concrete reason behind this.
Sir, I would like to point out the two major reasons which I think, sir. The first reason is, sir, the relationship with India and Myanmar has been one of the best at this times, even though they have a partial military rule. We have different projects in Myanmar also, India-Myanmar trilateral highway. So we have infrastructural needs in that. And the second reason, which I think, sir, Myanmar has been cooperating to counter insurgency in the northeastern region, like the Operation Sunrise. So I think, sir, India considered Myanmar as one of the trusted partners for infrastructure as well as internal security. So I think India
Okay,
don't want to break the relationship with Myanmar.
okay, thank you. So Arjun, that
Sir, you are not audible, sir. Umesh, sir.
yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Right now you are audible, sir.
Yes. Sorry for interruption. So that was enough from my side. Uh, Now I request Shankar Mochan Jha sir to please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Umesh sir. Good afternoon, Arjun.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you today?
Yes, sir. Fine, sir. Going good.
Okay. Uh, Arjun, you are a mechanical engineer.
Yes, sir.
So, does UPSC not offer mechanical engineering as an optional subject?
Yes, sir. It do.
It does.
Yes, sir.
So, why I can see that you did brilliantly well. I mean, remarkably well in your BTech. You have graduated with 90% marks. So, why did you not choose mechanical engineering as an optional, and why geography?
Yes, sir. Sir, it is true that my academic performance was good in BTech. So I was good at studies also. But when it comes to UPSC, sir, I had certain other parameters which look because it is an examination. And when I started, I was searching for an optional which enables me to complete my preparation within 1 year. So when I went to mechanical engineering as an optional, I personally felt that it is much difficult for a person like me to complete it within 1 year. And furthermore, it is a competition. It is a relative competition. And so I moved to my next options. And since I'm from mechanical engineering, I thought of having a semi-scientific subject and not a humanities. And geography being a semi-scientific subject, I had gone through that and I felt that it is comfortable with me. And I even had large number of colleagues who had taken geography and cleared. So I took their guidance also. And furthermore, sir, in our state, we have much less optional chance. We have less number of optionals which we are offered. So geography, we had enough mentors, enough test series, and enough resource material. So those are the reasons which I took geography.
So, this was a matter of strategy for you.
Sir, it was indeed really it is a matter of strategy to the clear examination, sir.
So, you mean civil services is a matter of strategy for you, not a spirit of service?
Sir, in my personal opinion, sir, entering the civil services needs some strategy, and after that, I think we should moreover focus on services, sir.
Okay. All right, Arjun.
Thank you, sir.
Uh, you have been debating through your school years and through your years in the university.
Yes,
Tell
sir.
me, is debate a performance, or is it is debate a dramatic performance, or is it a faithful rendition of your ideas and beliefs?
Sir, I would suggest. I am of the opinion that it is a mix of both, sir. And we need to apart from the normal discussions in debate, we need a certain level of dramatic expressions, because then only our points get validated in front of our opposition, and finally in debate winning is the main objective. And when it comes to arguing with valid points, it is also majorly needed, because it is a fact based objective type of debate which actually gets succeeded. So I think a mix of both is needed.
All right. Do you know anything about Mark Antony? Mark Antony.
Yes, sir, I do know, sir. He is famous for his speech during the Caesar's funeral.
Okay. So can you elaborate? Tell me something more about Mark Antony, his speech.
So Mark Antony is one of Caesar's friend, and his speech came at a moment
Mark
when
Antony is a real character. Is he a real character? Is Mark Antony?
Sir, I must admit that I'm not very sure on that, sir. I know that character from the Shakespeare's play, sir.
Okay. You know about him through Shakespeare's play. Yeah. So proceed. I'm sorry.
So Mark Antony's speech is one of the wonderful tales which I still love, because he's actually a person during the funeral speech. He actually from a large number of population who is there to criticize Caesar, through his speech he convinced the people in such a way that the people themselves came to understand what all good Caesar has done to them, and without even knowing, without actually making Brutus astonished, like being angry, because his careful selection of the words and careful expressions had actually made the people understand the truth, while at the same time the speech was moreover of a funeral speech indeed. So he is actually very good in oratory, sir.
But do you not find that speech very instigatory? He instigates the people into riots, which ends up in a civil war.
Sir, I think there are elements which have instigation in nature. I do admit with that, sir. But I think, sir, it is much more than instigation. I think he is much more focusing on the good deeds which are performed by Caesar and the bad deeds by Brutus. But though I admit that there are some elements of instigation in that.
Not some elements. It is an inflammatory speech. If such a speech were made in, do you think if such a speech were made in modern India, it would lead to your arrest under the Sedition Act, or the provisions of sedition under the IPC?
Sir, in modern India, I think, sir, Section 124 of Sedition Act is actually possible to be charged against me if I did such speech, because the Supreme Court has also said if one is actually making some statements creating violence or some other activities, he is subjected to sedition, sir.
Yeah, so absolutely. You see, Mark Antony's speech is very inflammatory. It does lead to a civil war in Rome. So it does not just have elements of or elements of violence or any such thing. It is supposed to be inflammatory. He instigates people to wage a war against the established establishment, the established democratic framework in Rome. So obviously, anyway, tell me, what do you know about the G7, and can you compare it with G8 in international relations?
So G7 is actually a group of 7 developed nations, much more industrial nations like US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, Japan, etc. And coming to your second part, sir, G8 is actually the ancestor of G7. And when Russia was also a part of the G7 countries, and due to Crimean invasion of Russia, Russia was ousted from the G7 initiative, G8 initiative, and it again turned into G7, sir.
How is G7 different from G20?
Sir, G7 actually comprises of well-developed nations having democratic credentials. And when it comes to G20 nations, these are involve nations which are in transition, which are in developing nations like India, Brazil, South Africa, etc. Sir. So it is much more of a larger concept.
Do you mean to say that G20 nations do not have good democratic credentials?
No, sir, I didn't mean that. But the other G7 nations are well developed, and they have been much more exhibiting democratic values. And when it comes to G20, there are certain nations like Brazil and all, where according to different reports, the
Again, you
democratic
said much
values-
more exhibiting democratic values. You are begging the question, Arjun. You just said that G20 nations have democratic credentials, but then you say G7 nations have much more democratic values. What do you mean?
Sorry, sir. I take back that, sir. Sorry.
So then tell me, what is my answer? What is the difference between G7 and G20?
Sir, G7 is industrially developed nations, sir, and G20s are nations which are developing and which are in the transition state of economy, sir. And
So is America a part of G20?
yeah, sir, with my limited knowledge, I think it is, sir.
So is America not a industrialized country?
Yes, sir. The G20 consists of the G7 plus other members, sir.
So, but then you said that G20 is about industrialized nations. Sorry, G7 is about industrialized nations. G20 is not about that.
Sir, with my limited information, sir, G20s are majority of the nations which are in developing stage. I have a sort of reading on that, sir. I'm with my limited information, that is
All
what I
right.
have.
All right, Arjun. G7 is a political, it's a forum for political issues, whereas G20 is a forum for economical issues. Fine. That is the primary difference between these two institutions. Okay.
Sure, sir.
Tell me something about Commonwealth of Independent States.
Sir, on the issue, the term is, I have limited knowledge, sir. It is a confederation of nations which was under the British rule, erstwhile British rule.
No. Okay.
Sorry, sir. Then I'm not aware of that, sir.
Okay. Tell me, Arjun.
Yes, sir.
I want you to use your understanding of geography, your understanding of economics and Indian society while you answer this question. Tell me 5 or 6 steps that you would take to augment the income of farmers in Bihar.
Sir, can I take a few seconds, sir?
Yes.
Sir, shall I proceed, sir?
Yes, please do.
Sir. So Bihar is actually one of the region which is having diverse terrains. When I come to in the Terai region, the region is coming to the agriculture perspective. So the Terai region is much more suited for sugarcane cultivation. When it comes to other regions, it is much more of an paddy cultivation, sir. And so I think being an administrator, the first thing which I will do is, sir, actually the region-based crop production will be promoted, sir, and the farmers will be incentivized to do so, because geographically speaking also, those regions provide the maximum benefit to farmers. And the second thing, sir, Bihar farmers are actually suffering from flooding, river flooding, on a regular basis, sir. On such a scenario, sir, a small number of embankments so as to prevent the flooding will be done, so that the farmers can be prevented from flooding and the destruction of crops. Sir, and another on an economic aspect, sir, the Bihar is one of the state which is not having the APMC mechanism. And so there should be some strong marketing mechanism so that they will get better remuneration for their production. So that would also be taken into consideration, sir. And also on the social scenario, the situation of Bihar on social scenario is not very good, sir. So farmers, especially women farmers, would be provided with incentivization so as to take cultivation for them, so that women empowerment can also be achieved. So and so all these steps together can bring about a better agriculture environment in Bihar, sir.
Okay, you spoke about embankments to control floods in Bihar. Do you not think that the institution that is in place in Bihar is pretty much aware that you control floods with embankments? So it has been 70 years of independence and still Bihar gets flooded every year. So do they not know about embankments? So, I mean, I'm sure they do. So why do you think that such a sorry state of affairs exists in Bihar?
Sir, I'm not wholly placing the blame on the authorities, sir. I also acknowledge the fact that the river Ganga is having a fluctuating regime, and so that is also a
Is it
major cause.
the river Ganga,
Sorry, Damodar, sir. Sorry, Damodar.
the Damodar?
Sir, sorry, sir. I cannot exactly remember the name, sir.
Okay, all right. Uh, you were talking about empowerment of women and increasing farm incomes in Bihar. Are you aware of the fact that not only in Bihar, but in almost all of India, women contribute the most so far as farm labor is concerned?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, women are already farmers. How is that going to help their empowerment?
Sir, women constitute, as you said, more percentage of farm labor force, sir. But empowerment is not just having them in labor force, sir. Providing them adequate labor wages is one of the major thing which I'll be taking care of, and also ensuring that their health and other well-being are also met. So I mean, a diverse socio-economic or social empowerment is needed rather than just the participation, sir.
Okay. So how do you explain that women have a very marginal representation in the arena of science and technology, engineering and mathematics, but they have such a large presence in the farm sector? How do you explain this disparity?
Sir, this disparity is actually caused majorly due to the patriarchal mindset, sir. Actually, when working in the fields, it is much more of a home affair because they are having the fields in the nearby homes. So the patriarchal mindset actually doesn't prevent them for going so. But when it comes to science and technology education, they have to move away from their families, and the patriarchal setup is not actually preventing them from taking such jobs. And secondly, also, sir, the education scenario for girls, there is a divide between boys and girls in education system especially when it comes to high school as well as the higher secondary education. So that actually also prevents the women from taking higher qualifications on science and
Okay,
technology.
so you are blaming gender stereotypes, gender injustice for this phenomena. Is there no other reason?
Sir, there
Okay,
are
tell
other.
me something about women in the private sector. Why do you have such little participation of women in the private jobs?
Sir, when it comes to the case of private jobs, sir, the women participation is comparatively low when it comes to other sectors because much more of the women are aspiration to become government servants because the students who get the girl child who get education are actually going for a formal jobs. They are trying for formal jobs, and also there is an
Does
issue.
private sector not offer formal jobs?
Yes, sir. I mean formal government jobs, sir.
Okay, so private sector, formal government jobs. Are there no formal jobs in the private sector? I'm talking about marginal representation of women in formal jobs in the private sector.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is also it is attributed mainly because these formal jobs are majorly associated with IT industries, especially if it can take the case of India. So these are mostly concentrated in some of the major urban centers, and women have to move a large distance from their home, and they need to take care of their family also. So such scenarios actually prevents them from taking private jobs even, sir.
Tell me something about the Maternity Benefits Act.
Sir, a Maternity Benefit Act was passed in 2017, providing holistic maternity benefits. Sir. The major criteria is the women who have the maternity leave has been increased to 26 weeks. So that is one major criteria. And the second thing is, sir, all the establishment which are employing more than 10 women should have a crush in them so as to accommodate their children. And
Can you
if the
correlate
maternity,
what you have just said? What you have just said. Can you correlate this to the fewer women in the private sector formal jobs?
yes, sir, I acknowledge your point, sir. It is also because women are actually going for maternity leave, and the private companies are hesitant to give the leave because of the loss factor, which they say.
Okay. All right, Arjun. What is, in terms of personal relationships, Arjun, can you tell me the difference between a girlfriend and a beloved?
Yes, sir. Sir, in my personal thinking, sir, a girlfriend is actually a girlfriend. Beloved is someone whom we cares much, and it may be 1 or 2% whom we are very much close, and it may even get into marriage relations. When it comes to girlfriends, sir, a large number of girlfriends will be there. It is just a gender stereotyping of friendship. When it comes to beloved, it can be both male or female, right, in the society. But beloved is one some whom we are actually planning to live with, someone who we like to spend much more time, sir, according to me, sir.
So you don't spend much more time with your girlfriend.
Sir, but beloved is someone for me who is much more comfortable to speak with, considering the girlfriend, sir.
Okay, but you people are comfortable talking to their girlfriends as well.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. I think it is personal, much more of a personal experience, sir.
Okay, so you aren't comfortable talking to your girlfriends?
Sure, sir. I'm comfortable, but when it comes to certain issues, I'm much more comfortable when I speak to my beloved peoples.
Okay. All right, Arjun. That is it from my end. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, sir.
I hand over to Suman, sir.
Arjun, just give me a moment.
Sure, sir.
Pardon me, Arjun, I had to do a change of rooms.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. It's not a matter, sir. Thank you.
So how are you doing, Arjun?
Sir, going good, sir.
Good. Okay. So let's start from, a question that has not been asked to you yet.
Yes, sir.
I couldn't help but notice that one of your hobbies that you've mentioned is walking.
Yes, sir.
So can you please elaborate? What do you mean by walking as a hobby?
Yes, sir. Sir, by walking, I meant it is a leisure. It is a type of leisure walking, and I do walking on a daily basis on evening walks, which I take, and I do visit rural places or some less crowded places. So, hobby is something which we do on regular basis and which actually rejuvenates us. So, for me, while walking, it actually rejuvenates my mind and it actually brings a peace in me. So, I took it as a hobby, sir.
Okay. So do you know that there's also professional walking? Are you aware of it?
Yes, sir. There is
Walking
a
as a
professional
professional
competition.
workout or walking as a diligent workout, a lot of people even recommend. Do you track any metrics? Like, do you wear any digital watch or something, or you track your metrics of walking?
Sir, in fact, I don't track, sir. It is more for me a leisure walking, sir, rather than a physical exercise. It is for me a leisure walking. I daily take different routes to walk. So it is for me a leisure walking, sir.
Okay. So just a follow-up question on that. Do you know that there's a term which is called as cadence? It is related to walking. Are you aware of it? It is a metric of how you measure the quality of someone's work. So that's cadence. Do you know what it means?
Sorry, sir. I'm not aware of the term.
Okay.
I'll read about it, sir.
Okay. Then coming to geography, as you see, we stay in India, and India has a monsoon type of climate wherein we have a lot of rainfall, especially just after summers, right?
Yes, sir.
But if you compare a Mediterranean, sorry, if you consider a Mediterranean type of climate, it usually rains in winter in the Mediterranean climate.
Yes,
Why
yes.
do you think there's this variation wherein the summers are relatively dry, but the winters it rains in the Mediterranean climate?
Sir, the fact is actually attributed due to the pressure winds and also the shifting westerlies which is present over the Mediterranean region, sir. When it comes to India, it is much more of a trade winds which is actually crossing the equator and getting as a southwest monsoon. When it comes to Mediterranean, it is much more of a westerlies issue, and which actually blows from during the summer season, it blows from land to sea, so that it doesn't carry any water. And in the winter season, actually the pressure belts shift and actually winds move from the water bodies towards the land, so they take up water, sir.
Okay. So then let's revert to one of your earlier answers. You strongly defended when it came to the IT regulations. So
Yes,
let's just have a logical train of thought. Okay.
sure, sir.
Let's say there's Twitter, or let's Twitter for say. Okay. No, forget Twitter. Let's take Facebook. Okay. So do you use Facebook?
Yes, sir, I do.
So you're aware of the nuances of how Facebook works, right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So let's say someone XYZ, Mr. XYZ, posted on Facebook that we need to kill uh, people of a particular religion. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then, a lot of people ended up sharing this. This message got widely circulated on Facebook. So then the law and order situation currently is in question of
Yes, sir.
a certain area wherein people of a certain religion are getting targeted. So now tell me, from the perspective of the government or from the perspective of, the law and order situation of the state, who do you consider accountable for it? Facebook or the people who spread this message, or both? Please justify.
Sir, on such a scenario, sir, I do think that the people as well as the Facebook has a role to play, sir. Tilted more towards the people, sir. People are actually the persons who should be much more restrained in actually performing these things, because they have to use their logical sense while sharing the messages, and also we have to keep our credentials of the society also. But at the same time, sir, Facebook is much more having new technologies like artificial intelligence, whereby they can track these hate speeches or hate messages, and their internal mechanism should also be very frequently like updated, so that they can remove such posts which is present in the Facebook. So I think, sir, both has to have a role in to play in such scenarios, sir.
So in this situation, you mean to say, let's say the government of India, let's say this situation happens, the government of India will also hold Facebook accountable. That is because Facebook was there. So that this provided a medium of such an expression, right?
Yes, sir.
So, but then,
Sir,
yes,
yes, sir. Yes,
yes,
sir. Please continue, sir. Sorry.
yes. But then you said people have to restrict to their ethical values and people have to bring morality into question. If you don't penalize murdering someone, people won't stop or people won't hesitate in murdering someone, right? So if you don't penalize such kind of action, people will continue to do so. So if people are being accountable, you need to know who is the person who started this message.
Yes, sir.
Then if the IT regulation is doing exactly this, it just wants to know if at all some message has been spread, some bad message has been spread, and hence the government of India needs to catch hold of the guy who started this message. How is this right to violation of privacy?
Sir, I do acknowledge the fact that the person who spread this should be penalized, and the draft regulations are also having such provisions, sir. But when it comes to right to privacy, sir, actually tracing the person right now they have a safe haven for the Facebook, etc., because they are just an intermediary, so they are not penalized. When the new regulations came, if they don't adapt, they will be considered as penalized, sir. But when it comes to right to privacy, sir, these data are much more end-to-end encrypted, and for a person's traceability, the whole network has, as per the scientific reports, the whole network has to be decrypted. So it can lead to privacy dilutions of a large number of other peoples also in these nets, sir. So I think in that aspect, that is an actually threat to right to privacy, sir. And moreover, sir, on these issues, this is an issue which you have protected is a value issue, sir. But when it comes to discretionary powers of the government, it can run up to some political issues or some other issues, sir. So I think there also there is a right to privacy issue, sir.
Okay. You did your graduation in mechanical engineering, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you fared quite well in it. A GPA of 9 is really good. So can you help me understand the difference between a vector, a scalar, and a tensor quantity? You've heard these terms, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir, scalar is a quantity which have only magnitude, and it doesn't have any direction. And when it comes to vector quantity, it has both direction as well as magnitude, sir. But I'm not aware of the last tensor thing, sir. I should read about it, sir.
Okay. So stress is a scalar or a vector?
Sir, it is a vector quantity, sir.
No. Stress is a tensor.
Okay. Sorry, sir. Sorry,
Okay.
sir. I'll read about it, sir.
Okay. So then coming to, okay, you were also a speaker in a model parliament, right, at school. So I've
Yes,
just
sir.
1, 2 questions. Let's see there. You enjoyed being the speaker of the house?
Yes, sir. I enjoyed, sir, though with certain limitations.
Okay. So let's say let's consider Lok Sabha. Let's say the speaker is absent. For some reason, he could not make it today. So then who will preside over the Lok Sabha?
Sir, it will be presided over by the deputy speaker, sir.
Okay. Let's say the deputy speaker also was not there. Then?
Sir, initially itself, they have a committee of 10 peoples or 10 panel of chairpersons or speakers. So they'll be selecting from them, sir.
Okay. So who selects this panel of chairpersons?
Sir, I think it is
Side
the
over the
speaker
house.
who selects, sir. Sir, I think I'm not sure, but I guess it is the speaker of the house, sir.
Okay. Then let's say the current Lok Sabha is dissolved, let's say either because of its natural expiry of terms or otherwise is dissolved. And then the new fresh elections happen, a fresh Lok Sabha is scheduled to happen, and the first session is scheduled now, right? Then
Yes,
who presides over such a session? Like, who is the speaker in this case?
Sir, it will be presided over by a pro tem speaker who will be the old age person, who will be the oldest person in the Lok Sabha, newly elected Lok Sabha, and he'll be selected by the president, sir.
Okay. So what do we mean by pro tem speaker? How is it different from being a speaker?
Sir, pro tem speaker is a temporary mechanism which actually having the pro tem speaker has only two jobs to do. One is to get the new legislators take their oath, and as soon as the and also to conduct the new speaker elections. And once the two jobs are over, the office of the pro tem speaker expires. And when it comes to speaker's office, it is a long continuing office, and it is continuing office even after 5 years till the new speaker takes over. So it is a permanent setup, sir.
Okay. You gave really good answers, so I can't, my head keeps going back to the earlier answers that you've already answered because they were really good ones. So let's derive one more question out of it.
Sure, sir.
As for Jasa's question, you ended up accepting this fact that had Mark Antony given such kind of a speech, inflammatory speech today in India, he would have definitely been booked under sedition, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can you please define sedition here? What do we mean by sedition in the Indian context?
So sedition or sedition under Article 124 is actually a British time rule, sir. and it actually means anyone who is
Article
threatening.
124. So it comes under which part of the Constitution?
Sorry, sir. It is IPC. I think it is Criminal Laws 124 articles. Sir.
Okay.
Sir, it is a British laws. It is a British law, and it has been continued in independent India. And it is actually sedition. Actually means actually threatening the security of the state, or insisting violence against the people, or even having infringing speeches which actually insist violence against the state, sir. And also, when it comes to New India, the recently also the Supreme Court has also said the sedition cannot be taken against people who criticizes the government. It will be only taken against people who insist violence, or who actually speeches hate speeches, so that the people get motivated to attack the government. So I think Mark Antony's speech at this present moment is someone who is threatening the existence of the state, and scoping for an armed rebellion. So I think it is subjected to sedition at present.
Okay. So let's delve a little bit further deep into this. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Suppose, let's say someone is booked under sedition law, like, someone gave a speech or wrote something, let's say journalist or XYZ, anyone, he's booked, he's charged under sedition law. Can the police go and arrest him directly?
Sir, though I'm not sure on the procedure, sir, I think the recent Supreme Court has said that when it comes to journalist case, there should be some safeguard mechanism for them from being booked under sedition. But the other procedures, I am not very sure, sir.
Do you remember the case of Aisha Sultana, which happened in Kerala 2 days ago?
Yes, sir, I do remember, sir.
She was charged for sedition and she was arrested.
Yes, sir.
Right?
She is yet to get arrested, sir. She's in Kerala right now, and she has been asked to get into Kavaratti by 20th of this month, sir, before the police, sir,
Yes.
to get arrested.
Yes, exactly. So, do you think it's right that the police can arrest like this? So the police can arrest anyone as per any offense whenever they want? How does it work?
Sir, I think if I can take specifically on the case of this Aisha Sultana, sir, I think she has some speeches which are infringing the violence, sir, because she has been terming central government has been providing bioweapon in Lakshadweep, sir, and it has been instigating people also in this turmoil situation. So I think it is okay to go with that, sir. But at the same time, sir, I think the sedition law has to be modified in such a way that codification of procedures, what all comes under sedition, should be codified. And also, when a case is booked under sedition, it's a serious charge, and a judicial oversight should be there before arresting any persons under sedition, sir.
Okay. So are you aware of two terms which is called a cognizable offense and a non-cognizable offense in India? There are two kinds of offenses in India, cognizable
Yes,
and non-cognizable. Are you aware of it?
Yes, sir, I'm aware, sir.
Okay, can you please define what it means?
Sir, non-cognizable offenses are offenses sir, though I'm not very sure on both, sir. One is one in which we can get the bail, and it is having lesser punishment. I think it is having lesser punishment, and we can.
I'll pause you there, because can get bail or cannot get bail, that is again bailable and non-bailable offense. So they are different. So there are four kinds of offenses: bailable, non-bailable, cognizable, non-cognizable. Okay, read upon it.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. I'll read upon it, sir. I have limited knowledge on that, sir.
Okay. Then, what do you think about the Central Vista project?
Sir, Central Vista project is one of the necessities of the spirit, sir. And I do think that the government should move forward with the Central Vista project, sir. Since ours is a democracy which is maturing, and by 2026 we have a refreezing of we will be increasing the number of seats in Lok Sabha, and at that time we should have a new Lok Sabha building where we can accommodate a large number of people. So I think we should start our work right now itself so that it get completed. And moreover, sir, Central Vista has been long pending project also, and we indeed, to become a better democracy, we need better representation. A stronger parliament or better accommodative parliament is needed. So I think, sir, Central Vista project is a need of the hour, sir.
Okay. One last question, like you're from Kerala. So
yes, sir.
Talking from the perspective of southern states versus northern states, Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let's accumulate mechanical engineering, entrepreneurship, business, everything into one. So are you aware of something called dedicated freight corridors? Are
Yes,
you
sir.
aware
I'm
of
aware,
it?
sir. I'm
Okay.
aware, sir.
Yes. So you know that there are two dedicated freight corridors being made,
Yes, sir.
but then both of them are in North India. That is, the Eastern dedicated and the Western dedicated freight corridors are essentially connecting Northern India, Western India, and Eastern India. Don't you think the South Indian states are left out of it? Don't you think the center specifically has this development skewed, towards just the northern states, and the southern states are being deprived of a good railway connectivity? Why do you think we don't have a southern dedicated freight corridor? Why don't we have it?
Sir, though the fact is that both the corridors are in the northern India, sir, I think there are certain reasons for that, sir, and I don't think it is a regional bias on that, sir. Much of the agriculture production occurs in the northern India till the Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh region, and both these are connected to the east or west corridor, sir, so that it enables freight
No, they are
movement.
not.
Mumbai is actually connected to
Yes,
Delhi,
but
sir.
it's essentially the JNPT, the port, which is
Yes,
getting
sir.
getting connected to northern India and all. And I
Yes, sir.
don't think honestly that the dedicated freight corridors are being constructed keeping agriculture in mind.
Sir, I have, with my limited knowledge, I think much of the major reasons which could be, sir, Bombay, Delhi, and Kolkata, both are the three major cities, and only Chennai is left back. So I think connecting these three is one of the major essential. And I do think that we should connect someone from the south also, but we can hold it for a moment till we understand the success of the new project, how it works. It is moreover a trial basis what we have started. So I think we should wait and watch how it gets succeeded.
So on
So that
trial basis, they could have constructed the southern dedicated freight corridor first, and then on the success, they could have done it to north. So don't you think the BJP, or they are showing somewhat preference to the North Indian states?
Sir, I don't think that they have any preferential basis, but there will be some political calculations in that. I do acknowledge that because the ruling dispensation has greater power in the North India. I do acknowledge that, but providing
I
regional
want
bias.
you to answer this with your knowledge of geography. Just last hint, and then that will be from my side. Use your knowledge on geography.
Sir,
What is, yes,
is it because of the natural? It is because of the port facilities or land
exactly.
availability is cheap. Okay, sir, it is because of the port facilities which is associated, which are being connected, sir.
So for South India, we have the Sagarmala Pariyojana. You have the sea. You can connect the states via sea,
Yes, sir. Yes,
and
sir.
that's
Both.
what the government has been doing.
Yes, sir. The other was an inland terminal, sir. Inland type of connectivity, continental connectivity through dedicated, and Sagarmala for the